Hey everybody, it's Kennedy Hawk from the Marvel Champions Monthly team here with another episode, joined with Terrence and an awesome guest host. So, Terrence is going to run today's episode, so I'll let him take it away, introducing everybody so we can get to our main topic.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, we have here a special guest, Autumn, and I kind of know her, at least of fame from the Lord of the Rings community, kind of where I cut my teeth on these card games. And she designed a epic multiplayer scenario, and as we've been doing a bunch of these for the con that's about coming up, I thought it would only be appropriate to bring someone who actually designs this stuff and has done it.
Hi, thanks
Autumn,
for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming. I guess to kick it off for folks who may not know you, who don't play Lord of the Rings, how'd you get started with Marvel Champions?
So, like you said, it started with Lord of the Rings. I'm very involved with the Lord of the Rings community, have been since 2020, making alt arts and decks, and I write articles and I run quests of the week and all that sort of stuff. 2021, I think it was, I got into Marvel Champions and I decided I wanted to kind of do creative stuff with Marvel as well. And so I've designed a few things for Marvel, not professionally, like I don't work for Fantasy Flight Games, I just do this casually. I've designed a campaign that just uses official cards, kind of like they have those design challenges they've had, but I think I made my campaign before they started doing those design challenges for the community. But that was called Streets of Chaos or Streets of Rage. One of them is a modular set. One of them is my campaign name. And then I also created a, like you said, epic multiplayer Loki scenario that originally was going to be part of a campaign, but I kind of scrapped that campaign, and it has become like an event scenario for my local community. I've run it here in Colorado a number of times, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. I guess when did you, start doing custom content for the game?
I was working on my first campaign. It must have been late 2021 or early 2022. And then that was just a campaign, like a loose campaign that tied together the scenarios were the Rhino and then Wrecking Crew, and then it was the two Green Goblin scenarios, and then it finished with the Hood. So it was like a street level campaign. There was minor campaign things that carried over from one scenario to the next, but it didn't have any like campaign cards or custom cards or anything like that. It was very simple, just kind of get myself started with designing custom content for Marvel. And then it was the spring and summer of 2022 that I started creating this second campaign called Infinite Incursion. And the idea there was I had a bunch of friends online that we all lived in different states. Well, some of us lived here in Colorado, but a lot of us lived in different states. And so I wanted to create a campaign where you get a bunch of different play groups to play through the campaign simultaneously, and then the outcome of your scenario influences the other play groups. So you could have something where, like, if I do really well in this scenario, I can give one of my cards in my deck to another player for them to use, and I still have it, but like they also have it. So you'd get these weird situations where you'd have, like, we had Miss Marvel's Embiggen upgrade given to a different hero, like through like a multiverse portal, as it were. And so it created all these weird, cool interactions between playgroups. And I think I bit off more than I could chew with that one. We were kind of playtesting it back in 2022, and it just kind of overwhelmed me. And so I decided to just take my favorite scenario from that campaign, which was the Loki scenario, and just flesh that out instead and create like a event scenario from it. So it's been a few years actually since I have really been designing Marvel stuff, but the Loki one I kept refining, and I had to keep working on it as new releases came out, because every time a new hero comes out, I have to design a new villain for Loki, because, well, we'll get into the gimmicks, I imagine, of the scenario, but you're fighting alternate villain versions of the heroes that we have.
Sounds super fun. I feel like a lot of us reached out to figure out how to play with like multiple or different play groups like in 2021, 2022 for many reasons. So this seems like right up the alley of what the community needed right then.
Yeah, we were all in lockdown, and that's the reason I got into living card games in the first place. Was I used to be a competitive X-Wing player, and then 2020 hit, and all of the, you can't go out to your game store and put your fingers on other people's miniatures, and so I was like, I need something I can play at home by myself and stay socially distanced. And so that's when I got into Lord of the Rings and Marvel and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was originally designed around social distancing, and weirdly enough, this Loki scenario turned into the opposite of that, where you're playing with like 50 people at a time.
How much have you run it, I guess, like online with people?
I've never done it online. I've only ever done it in person. I should do it online sometime, but I don't have the tech savviness to like make cards on Tabletop Simulator or whatever the kids are using these days. But I just kind of like print out using like a at-home printer the card images and then put them into sleeves. So I've run it with my friends a couple of times, and I've run it at a local game store for an organized play event. There was an organized play like set that was sent, and then we played the Loki scenario. And then I've done it in Denver once, where we had a bunch of people show up, and it was the biggest one we've done. So every time I've tested it, I've done with more people, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Should we dig into the scenario?
Yeah,
Stop teasing people.
I can share the website, and then you can walk us through it. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great.
In theory, I can do that. Parallel Loki scenario. Here we go. So here's your website. And at the top, there's a bunch of the Lord of the Rings stuff you have, as well as some Marvel Champions alt arts and this Parallel Loki tab, which is where we're at if people want to check this out. And yeah, why don't you walk us through how this all works?
So first of all, let's talk about the inspirations for this scenario, because it kind of helps to understand what's actually going on with the narrative. This was conceived as being inspired by Loki Season 1, the TV show, in which, if you haven't seen it, there's a bunch of parallel universe Lokis, and one of them is a female Loki who can mind control people, basically. And she's named Sylvie, but in the comics, I don't think there's a Sylvie in the comics. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just like Loki. So the idea here with this scenario is you are going up against this parallel universe version of Loki, a female Loki who has mind-controlled heroes from an alternate universe and brought them into your universe to take over Asgard. So it uses the Loki scenario, but importantly, it does not use the Infinity Gauntlet, because I know a lot of people don't like the fact that the only way you can fight Loki is with the Infinity Gauntlet. And so instead of using Infinity Gems, she has this Mischief deck. So let me just read out the main scheme here. It replaces the main scheme with a separate main scheme. And instead of using the normal Loki cards, you're using the Loki set, Personal Nightmare, Whispers of Paranoia, and both of those are from Sinister Motives, and then Standard. And one additional modular set, which has to include at least 4 minions in it. I like to use Temporal for this because it's very flavorful for bringing things in from an alternate universe, such as like dinosaurs. And then it also has a huge stack of villains. So the vanilla Loki scenario has, like 5 different versions of Loki, and they swap in and out of play, and you've got to defeat a number of them to win. So in this one, instead of fighting different versions of Loki, you're fighting different corrupted heroes. Heroes that have been mind controlled by Loki. And so I've made one for every hero in the game up to a point. I'm not actually current with these, so I think I only have through the end of the X-Men wave. But basically what you do is for everyone at the group, or everyone at the event, you find out every hero that's being played, and you create a deck with those, and then you add more random villains into that villain stack until you have enough to distribute 5 to every table. So just like with the normal Loki scenario, you're going to get 5 random villains dealt to you, but they're all going to be different, and they're going to be, for the most part, heroes that are being played at the event. And so that means we'll come to some interesting play that happens with that. Another thing you do is you use the Whispers of Paranoia set to create this Mischief deck, which effectively replaces the Infinity Gauntlet. And so when you're playing the scenario, anything that would refer to revealing a card from the Infinity Stone deck instead reveals a card from the Mischief deck. And that adds a lot of unique Loki flavor, because those are all very illusion and trickery based, and it just felt like a really good fit for Loki. So every table has their 5 random villains, which are versions of the heroes turned into villains. They also all have an environment in play called A Case of Identity. If you want to scroll down, Kennedy Hawk. So it's an environment, a case of identity. It just reminds everyone that villains don't cause uniqueness conflicts. If they did, that would be a problem. Not be a fun scenario if a villain came out and instantly killed your hero because there's a uniqueness conflict. But also, when you defeat one of these villains, you find every player at the event that's playing that hero. Usually an event organizer will just yell out something like, Miss Marvel has been defeated. And then everyone who's playing Miss Marvel gets dealt a face-down encounter card from their own deck, and they get +2 hand size until they next draw up to their hand size. So they get a little reward for someone in an alternate table defeating this villain version of themselves. But they also get an encounter card. So that makes it fun, because you never know when you're going to get hit with that random encounter card and the extra boost to hand size. And then there's also a support that each table gets, which is the Time Variance Authority. And you can return this support to the event organizer to immediately switch your villain with the current villain in another table. So if you're having a really hard time with the villain version of Ironheart, and your table is just really not set up for it, you can use the Time Variance Authority once per game to just take a little stroll around the event, look at the other tables, see what everyone else is fighting, and say like, oh, you're fighting Groot. We could probably deal with that. Here, take Ironheart. I'll take that. And you switch the villains, and it creates a fun sort of sense of mischief, which is fun for Loki, but also like community of like, we're all in this together. I'm having a really hard time. Who can give me something easier? So that's kind of the core of it. And then it functions a lot like the normal Loki scenario, where you're trying to defeat a certain number of them, but instead of each table having their own victory condition, the event as a whole has a victory condition of a number of these corrupted heroes to defeat. And they all have different abilities, all based on either the flavor of the hero or the mechanics of the hero. And once the event as a whole has defeated, I think my recommendation is like 3 villains per table for the whole group, then you've done it, and you all get to go home patting yourselves on the back.
Victory.
Yeah.
Cool.
That sounds super awesome.
These are some examples of the corrupted heroes.
Yeah, so let me read out an example here. Deadpool is one of my favorites because it actually like interacts with this sort of mass play thing in a unique way. So Deadpool as a villain is 2 scheme, 2 attack, hero and corrupted traits. And Deadpool gets +1 scheme and +1 attack for each acceleration token on the main scheme. And there's a forced response at the end of the villain phase trade Deadpool for the active villain at the other table with the most acceleration tokens on the main scheme. And more than likely, if you've got someone at the event playing Deadpool, they probably have the most acceleration tokens, so oftentimes you'll have Deadpool versus Deadpool, which feels like a lot of fun.
I've noticed that there is not a cap on that star.
There sure is not.
He's deadly, right?
Yeah, and if you really can't deal with Deadpool, then you've got to use your time variance authority once per game ability to give Deadpool to someone else. The other thing with Deadpool is a lot of the Loki encounter set cards trade out your villain for a set-aside villain. Deadpool might not be out the whole time. He might get traded out for another one of your random villains.
You have to hide him in a villain deck somewhere, and then
Exactly, yeah.
hope he doesn't
Or
come
he'll
out
just
again.
come out and get it stronger.
Yeah, just need to hunt for him as the first villain you take out.
Do you want me to read this one?
Well, yeah, let's read Rogue, and then we can show people where all the cards are further up in the article, I think.
So Rogue is a 2-scheme, 2-attack villain. And side note on this, I think pretty much every villain I use their exact stats from their hero, just scheme an attack, thwart an attack, just copy and pasted it over. So there shouldn't be any surprises for their values. But her ability is forced response after the villain phase begins. Shuffle the stack of unused villain cards and turn the top one face up. Rogue is considered to have the text of that villain's text box until the start of the next villain phase.
Well, yeah, so at the...
How nasty are the B-sides of these?
I did not ever design B-sides.
Okay.
So if you're playing in expert mode, feel free to throw in an aerial setup permanent or something, or give them +5 per player health. Well, I mean, you're also adding the expert set. So I never got around to doing it because I designed 50 some odd villains, and I was like, wow, I don't want to do this all over again.
Yeah, sounds like doubling all the work.
And for the most part, it would just be add a couple numbers and whatever. But I find at events most people don't want to play an expert anyway.
Just need to get everyone that corrupted suit that we designed, Kenny Hawk.
Don't worry about that. So yeah, at the bottom of the article, there was the link to get to all the card images. So I'll just scroll through them really quickly so people can see some of the cool villains, Loki corrupted heroes that are here. I like that they kind of foil the character. Right, Black Panther was our first hero with Retaliate. He has Retaliate on his corrupted hero side, and I think they all kind of do that, is try to mirror what the character does, or they're super thematic. So that's pretty neat.
Do you have a set of top 3 favorites that you designed?
Yeah, and some of them interact in a really interesting way with the hero. So if you have your own villain with, if you have a matching villain with your hero, some of them have really interesting counterplay, or they will counter you in certain ways. I'm trying to think of some examples. I think maybe Bishop has... Oh no, X-23. Okay, so X-23 is a good example of this. X-23's villain says, forced response, the first time during each player's turn X-23 is attacked and damaged, X-23 activates against the player that attacked her. So you can get in the situation where the X-23 hero will attack X-23 villain, and then the villain will attack the hero, and then deal damage to the hero and ready the hero because of her ability, and then she'll attack back at the villain. And so it's just 2 X-23s just clawing each other to death, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, some of them are, when you just turn a hero's ability into a villain ability, they turn into really interesting interactions with that hero in particular. But some of my favorites are... I really like Deadpool just because he floats around through the...
Oh, I think my headset cut out, Deadpool, for sure.
I really like Miss Marvel. So the hero version of Miss Marvel can replay events. The villain version of Miss Marvel, you resolve the first win reveal effect each round an additional time. It's like that old encounter or modular set from Green Goblin I can't remember what the card is called, but there's like an obligation or an environment that does that. But yeah, Miss Marvel does it as well.
Nice. I saw Jubilee kind of like counter her ability too, right? Or counters like probably her deck building hook. So a pretty neat,
Yeah.
neat
Oh yeah.
thing to be
Yeah.
able to do to try to counter each hero's ability. And I saw you did have like the Iceman Jubilee wave in there. So yeah, everything up to just this last release, which is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So only 2 heroes missing. And you'll just have to shuffle random ones in if you decide to play one of those heroes. If 2 people at the event play the same hero, they can both get that reward. So do you shuffle 2 copies of those heroes amongst the tables then? Or of those corrupted heroes?
No, I always just have one copy of each villain.
Got it.
It's just like if 3 people were playing Jubilee and whatever table had been dealt Jubilee defeated her, then all of the Jubilee players at the event would get that bonus.
I would get the bonus any encounter card. Cool.
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
What's the
I mean-
biggest event you've run with the Loki scenario?
The biggest event?
Yeah.
I think we had like 18 players.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. It was 18. It was like 5 tables. Yeah, I think it was 5 tables, like 18 players. So it was pretty sizable. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. I'm curious, how much do people use that time variance authority support? Like, I can totally picture, some tables just sucking up and dealing with whatever villain they have in front of them and kind of doing that. But, like, how often did you see people walk around and be like, you know what? I want to trade this villain. Or did you ever see people, like, grief other players? It's like...
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think that the time variance authority is way underutilized whenever I run this. Because I think people get into this mindset of like, whatever villain I have on my table, I just have to figure out how to deal with. Because that's how we play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get in that situation where, like when you're playing a video game and you've got 1,000 health potions in your inventory, and you get to the final boss and you're like, but what if there's a post boss and I need these health potions more? So like you get into this mindset of like, it's a once per game ability. Should we save it for something where we really need it? Like, we're doing fine with this villain. We should. And so oftentimes I have to be the one to like purposely use it even when we don't super need it, so that I can remind other players at other tables like, hey, this is an option, even if it's just for fun. Like it's fun to walk around and find another table that you can give something. I think I've griefed someone because I found the table where they were like really smashing through the scenario. Like I even had to give them additional villain cards because they were just like, yeah, we already beat all 5 of ours, so like, are we done? Or I was like, no, I can give you more villains. But I also like used my time variance authority to find the hardest one I could find and give it to them. So yeah, I've been the grief player.
Nice. I think Kenny Hawk and I have had to do similar things. Not really griefing, but definitely when we're doing
griefing.
But definitely like, you get different groups for such large events too, right? Of like you're saying, like you have that group that's just like smashing through the villains, right? And so we've had some stuff where you like pass things from group to group, and you'll just get some stuff that's stuck because like that group plays really fast and then they're just like waiting around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other groups that are playing at normal speed.
Yeah, it's always hard to like synchronize things. What I like about this is players and tables can play at whatever speed they're used to playing at. And if one table is super fast, then yeah, you punish them with a bigger villain deck, but the other tables are still getting to contribute, which is fun.
Yeah. One of my design goals with this scenario was to correct a few things I've seen with certain like massive multiplayer scenarios. So we have a game store in Denver called the Wizard's Chest. Shout out. And they like to run these normal scenarios as massive multiplayer scenarios. So, we'll all get together. There'll be like 20 of us, and we'll play Mojo. And what we'll do is there will be a global threat level for that main scheme for the whole room. And so, it'll be, for Mojo, it's an astronomical number because it's like 100 for single player or whatever. But when you remove threat, you're removing it from that global number. And so if the global number hits whatever the fail threshold is, the whole room fails. But similarly, the villain also has like a global health value. But what I've found with those is sometimes they're a lot of fun, but for certain scenarios, it's a whole lot of bookkeeping, and the event organizer basically doesn't get to play their own game because they're just walking around from table to table with like an iPad or something, just putting in numbers into a spreadsheet to calculate this running total. And so, yeah, one of my goals with this was to have each table basically play autonomously, and the only thing that the event organizer needs to keep track of as a whole is just the number of villains we've defeated. Like, and when a table defeats a villain, they can just shout out, "We defeated Doctor Strange," and then there's a cheer, and then whoever is playing Doctor Strange does their thing with the extra encounter card and the extra hand size, and the event organizer puts a little tally mark on the board. Or even better, whoever defeated Doctor Strange can walk him up to the front and put him on a board or something, and then everyone can see who we've defeated. So it lets you play a lot more simply because you don't have to have these, spreadsheets of data to figure out if you're winning or not.
Yeah.
But it also gives you that sense of community with everyone else playing.
Nice. Do you, when you run this, do you play as well and not just run the event? Okay. Man, we really suck, Kenny Hawk.
No, we're doing that this year. Don't worry.
You're actually playing
in
this
our
year?
event for the first
Heck
time.
Yeah.
Usually we walk around. So at the first two Con of Heroes events we did, the first game was 105 players, and the second game was 120. So it's it's difficult because someone's going to have a rules question. So Hone and I just run around and answer questions, and then we play it later that night with a smaller group, which is always more enjoyable because there's few enough tables that we can just look at each other and shout when we need to. But this year, there's the concept of a giant table in the center that different tokens will stockpile at, and then people will take them from our table. So they're going to walk to us this year, Terrence. They don't know that yet, but spoiler alert.
Wait,
That's really
does
clever.
that mean we're playing the same game?
Yeah, we have to, I think.
By design.
By design.
Yeah, maybe should we pivot and talk about stuff for Con, and we can circle back on just general epic multiplayer stuff?
Yeah, that works. Do you want me to share the spoilers we have for today?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and before we move on, actually, for those that are listening to this as a podcast, you can find my website at theroseofgondolin.wordpress.com, and I've got all this stuff on there, so go take a look.
And we'll put that link. Yeah, you got it. Say it.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. Or by we, I mean Kenny Hawk will put it in the show notes.
It's already in there. It's good to go. And are you going to be at Con of Heroes this year?
Yeah. Yes, I'll be there.
So we might get the chance to play.
This is my first
Loki
year going.
Scenario. Excited to have you.
I will bring it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited. Just bring lots of Hawkeye villains. That's what you need to know. We'll be good. Okay. Share screen. These are the buttons I click, right? Okay. Spoiler alert. So if you've watched the MCM YouTube channel, some of this has been spoiled already, but there's new spoilers intermixed into this podcast episode. Because in this episode, we're mainly talking about how this functions as an epic multiplayer. So the last two Con of Heroes, we've designed an epic multiplayer that was a modular set, so it could mix into any scenario. But this time, it's a standalone scenario, and we wanted to make sure it worked in single table mode for when you go home and play with your family or your group at your house. And we wanted it to work in some sort of epic multi-table mode. So we're going to get live reactions here as we go through. So the scenario this year is a Carnage scenario, because Hone really likes Spider-Man, and he wanted some Spider-Man stuff, right? That's how we came up with this.
We only got one box. I feel kind of let down, right?
Yeah.
There's so much more content that you can do in this universe. No, I'm just kidding. FG's doing a great job. They have so much content to pull from.
Can't do it.
I selfishly wanted more, and I get to pick, so.
So yeah, this scenario gets played in two phases. So it's a whole villain. So here shows the villain card, and the main scheme 1A and 1B. So we'll read main scheme 1A, because that'll tell you sort of what's going on. So again, there's a narrative to ours as well, and there was a recent Carnage run where Carnage tried to I don't know what Carnage does. He eats people, and then he ascends to godhood by collecting souls of cultists. So he's doing the same thing here. In phase 1, he's trying to recruit enough cultists to worship him so that he can become a god that we'll have to take down in phase 2. So you'll include a double-sided Carnage villain, depending on if you're playing in standard or expert. Carnage a new standard set that'll be given out at the con, and then a couple mod sets, so this Cultist of Carnage mod set, and 2 additional mod sets. And then there's a setup ability on the main scheme that says before you do anything, look through all the cards you have, and if anything says it's some number B, that's the card you're going to want to remove if you're playing in single table mode. But if it's card some number A, you'll use that in single table mode. So single table mode is A's, multi-table mode is B's. And that's just so, in the past, we've always had cards that are worded awkwardly when they're played at a single table, so we wanted to give people the chance to not have to ask and get stuck in rules quandaries that often happen in Marvel Champions. So an example of that here is the villain, right? This level 1 villain is Carnage 1B, so something on this Carnage card relates to the epic multiplayer version of Carnage that's different from the single table version. In Phase 1, we have a repeatable main scheme and a repeatable villain, and the entire room is going to kind of be dwindling and trying to stop Carnage from accumulating too many things. So it says, forced response, after Carnage attacks and defeats an ally, you'll place a cultist counter on your Here to Slay objective. And when defeated, you'll remove some threat from a side scheme and heal Carnage back to full health. So you're going to keep punching through Carnage to remove threat from this side scheme. And the main scheme is as low as Rhinos, so it pops at 7 per player, and it's going up 2 per player per round. So it's anticipated that this main scheme will sometimes pop. And when it reaches its threshold, you're going to remove all threats and place 1 per player cultist counters on your Here to Slay objective. So we should probably show what those objective cards are for that to make any sense. So here they are. So the Here to Slay objective, this is again the 5B version, so this is the epic multiplayer version, says when there are 3 per player cultist icons or cultist counters here, or at the Great Web table, progress to the main scheme, and then there's a response that moves those counters to the main table once per round. So once per round, you'll take all your counters and bring them over to that table where we'll be gathering them. So that double per player icon means per player in the event. So if we have 100 people in the event, he's going to have to get 300 cultist counters there, which is a lot. So we're just going to have a dial at our table, and Terrence and I will be tracking that. There's also a side scheme, Along Came a Spider. So there's a forced interrupt on this. When this side scheme would be defeated, place a Web Warrior counter on this side scheme, then place extra threat back in this side scheme instead of defeating it. So during Phase 1, our goal is to keep punching Carnage before he gets enough cultists to move to the second phase, and to gather a bunch of these Web Warrior counters, because they're gonna do something for us, hopefully, in the second phase. So when we move to the second phase, there's a threshold. Right, it says 3 per player cultist counters arrive here, progress to main scheme 2A. When we reach 2A, it's going to instruct us to flip Carnage to his ascended deity side, and to flip the Here to Slay and the Along Came a Spider side scheme and environment to their other sides. Let's look at what those flipped versions look like. And the flipped version of the environment is actually a spoiler for another podcast on April 15th. So we can't tell you what happens there, but it's some way that Carnage gets buffs.
All right.
We're the hero show, so we figured we'd talk about hero stuff here. So
That makes sense.
on the hero side, we get this World Wide Web side scheme, which is really like a multiverse wide web. So it's a side scheme with only 1 threat on it. And when it would be defeated, instead you're going to remove a Web Warrior counter from the Great Web table. So you're going to go remove one of those Web Warrior counters, and then you have a set-aside deck of spiders from the multiverse that you can summon, and you can pick one of the top 2 spiders of that deck and summon them as a free ally onto your table. And in this phase, we do have one of those epic health pools for Carnage, but we put it onto the players to bring us the damage total, right? So Carnage can't take more than 6 damage per round, 6 per player damage per round at any given table. He's defeated when he takes 20 per player in the event. And after the villain phase begins, you're going to take all your damage and report it to the Great Web table and sort of reset how much damage is on Carnage. So we'll have a dial. People will be walking up to us every 10 seconds and saying, hey, add 25, subtract 25 health from his health pool, and things like that. So the just like an overarching way of it works is in phase 1, what the hero's goal is to gather a bunch of these web warrior counters. Because once we get to phase 2, there's no more ways for us to get these web warrior counters, and we have to spend them to get these web warrior allies to really hold off Carnage. Because if the main scheme in phase 2 pops too many times, then Carnage has defeated the universe. So we really have to make sure all the tables have this like resource that we've gathered as a group. And here's 2 examples of those web warriors, because those also interact between tables. So this one on the left is Spider-Man. He has 2 thwart and 2 attack and 3 health. And he gains each trait on your identity card. So he's not going to mess up your like team deck building. It's like Spider-Man's and all those Marvel team ups. He's on like every team ever. And then all the web warriors have when defeated effects. So when defeated, you'll draw 1 card. You'll shuffle this card back into your team's web warrior deck. And then you choose another player in the Spider-Verse, which means a player at any table. It could be your own, but that would be boring. And that player draws a card as well. Spider-Man Miles Morales is very similar. 1 thwart and 3 attack with 2 consequential and only 2 health. But he takes no consequential when attacking an enemy with a status card. And when he's defeated, he'll stun a minion and shuffle himself into the web warrior deck. And then choose a player somewhere else in the Spider-Verse and have them stun a minion engaged with them. So you're going to kind of be passing all these buffs to multiple tables as we recruit these spiders.
That's very cool.
And that's the gist of what it is. It's a huge scenario, right? The 1A scheme said you're using like a new standard from the con set. You're using Cultists of Carnage. All the cards in this Carnage deck and two mod sets. So you're going to have a pretty huge deck. But a lot of it is ways to interact with other tables and to remove counters and add counters to these environments. But the main goal as a team, again, is to stall long enough in phase 1 that it eventually becomes inevitable. He will progress to the next stage before you don't gather enough web warriors and have to fight Carnage on your own. Another fun fact, all of our Spider Web Warrior allies do not have the uniqueness icon because they're slightly different variants than the Peter Parker we know. So it's like Peter Parker 617, not 616 or something like that.
That's very cool.
But yeah, that is this year's epic multiplayer scenario. I'm excited to see what it's like we've tested it a bunch of times with 3 tables at my local store, but we haven't tested it. We always do this. We test with like 3 to 4 tables because that's what our local store can manage. And then we go to the con and we're like, should we split it into 2 groups? No, we'll just do all 100 people in one. So we'll see.
I mean, that's always my recommendation, and you never listen to me.
Well, should we do it this year? I don't know.
It's going to be complete chaos either way, I think.
It will be, but it's fun chaos, hopefully.
Sounds like a blast. I hope that when people are using these win defeated abilities on the web warriors, they're actually like choosing other tables. Because it'd be really easy to fall into that trap of just like, I'll just do it on myself.
There's a couple of them that say they have to be at another table.
Okay.
And that's the way it originally was, but we ran out of cards in our card slot to have 2 versions of every spider. So it ended up being that we were like, okay, for this, if they want to use it twice at their table, they can. But I know at my table, I'm going to walk to other people. And if like 10 of us start doing it, then all of a sudden everybody starts doing it. In the Kang scenario, or modular set one we did, we had a multiverse effect that was the same thing. It was like when you defeat a minion or when you trigger like a treachery card, you would go do something with another table in the multiverse. But there was a little rules card for single table mode that was like, you're considered another table in the multiverse when you're the only table. And that worked as well, but it also led to a lot of questions, which I'm trying to avoid, which still won't happen. But, we're going to try.
Yeah, well, that one also had the issue that when you defeated Kang, tables would eventually drop from the game. So at a certain point, there was only 1 table left. So then all the multiverse effects would kind of be lame at that point.
It dwindled down.
Cascading.
Yeah.
So how many of these web warriors are there?
There are 7 different web warriors, so each table could summon 7 of these allies at once. Carnage does a lot of extra activations, though, so I'm guessing that a lot of them will end up blocking. We'll see.
And they'll still count for that Carnage ability of adding threat when they're defeated from
yeah, so in phase 2, if Carnage attacks and defeats an ally, they'll place threat onto the main scheme. So you're going to kind of have to decide between letting him dwindle and how close can I let that main scheme go. And it's generally like the theme, I think, of the shield box now that I'm playing it is like there's always too many buttons to push in every scenario. And that kind of happens in this one too. Like in the first phase, you're like, okay, well, the main scheme pops at 14 because there's 2 of us. It's going up 4 per player. So do I focus on that or do I get another web warrior? Because we know we're going to need those. And at some point, you just don't have enough thwart to distribute or enough attack for all the minions that are coming out, and something gives way.
And defeating Carnage Phase 1 lets you remove threat from the side scheme?
Yeah, every time you defeat Carnage, you basically get 1 web warrior counter because it removes 3 per player threat, so it clears the whole side scheme.
Oh, okay.
But it takes 28 damage to defeat him, so you could remove 12 threat or deal 28 damage, but it makes it so the aggression player isn't just like feeling bored in the first phase. They can punch Carnage in the face and get a few web warrior counters as well. It should be fun. I think that's going to be Friday afternoon, if I remember right. But we usually play it Saturday night too. Yeah, it should be. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And I think there's a couple people planning to play some of the older epic scenarios on Saturday as well. So just look around for tables, because Saturday is kind of like a free play day. There's not a huge structured event. So I'm expecting to see a lot of them get played, which will be fun.
Yeah.
And maybe people will print Loki. We'll see. More people.
Yeah, I'll bring it. So we'll see. I'm a huge fan of the Spider-Verse movies, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse. And so this seems like right up my alley. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a strong spider theme this year, I would say. So we'll see. Hopefully that Silk Hero pack comes out the day before the con like it's currently scheduled.
Oh,
and you just buy it
yeah.
at Game Center?
Yeah, it's currently scheduled for the day before the con. I actually called Game Center this week, and it was, I don't know, some entry high school level employee at the front desk, right? But I was like, you need to tell your manager to buy a lot of copies of Silk and Shuri. It's very important.
Have like 100 on the shelf. Because I don't want to walk next door to Fantasy Flight Games and knock on their door and be like, can I get these, please?
More, yeah.
That happened the first year of the con, right? Nova
and Ironheart came out, and they only had like 20, and they sold out in the first 3 minutes the store was open, and then like 50 more appeared like an hour later, and they were all gone again. Because I think it was the Friday was the release date, but most people travel on Thursday, so they got there without it, and they were like, "Oh, I want the new cards," and it was funny. And the cards are real too. I thought I would show that. They have arrived, so I have my set sleeved here.
Oh.
So we don't have to worry. The cards have arrived. There's no shipping delays. They're actually already packed in a suitcase. This all comes in my carry-on suitcase, and it's pretty hilarious when I put it above my seats in the airplane. I'm pretty sure like the pilot has to like fly to the left the whole flight because it's just the weight.
And of course, when you go through security with like a suitcase full of just rows of cards, it looks like C4 on their scanners. So
but yeah, every single time it gets inspected. So I put it on the conveyor belt, and I'm like, "You're gonna inspect this one," and they're like, "We'll see." And then every time, like charm.
You don't like, yeah. I feel like you can take, like, if you have it in like a deck thing, you can take it out and just like pre-open it.
Not 170 copies of 72 cards. I hate to tell you.
So everyone gets Carnage set, Carnage Standard, or Symbiote Standard, and then were there 2 other modulars in there?
It's actually a quite crazy. Like this entire pack or this entire pile is those cards. So it's 72 cards. It's a 26 card Carnage scenario, a 3-card Children of Carnage modular, a 6-card Cultist of Carnage modular, a 12-card High Flying modular, which is like giving heroes aerial that shouldn't have it, so that should be fun. A 12-card new standard set, and then a couple campaign and challenge cards to round it out to the 72 that fit. So it's our biggest pack yet.
Wow.
Which is exciting, but also
really
like terrifying.
Yeah, it's a worrying trend because the number keeps going up each year.
Yeah, we're gonna have to stop that.
And next year it's gonna be like you're gonna get a full like deluxe box. You get
268 cards.
You get your 5 scenarios.
Well, our goal was like this could be like a scenario pack, right? It comes with 2 or 3 mods, a standard set, a new scenario, and I think we said that jokingly at the con last year, and then we were like, "Haha, that won't happen," and then it happens.
You heard it here first, folks. We're gonna have a full deluxe box next year.
Deluxe box in 2 years. Hohen's designing all of the heroes, and
I thought we're outsourcing it to Autumn.
Oh yeah.
Am I doing it?
Point.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or memories of epic multiplayers people have played in?
I mean, I guess, like, what are your favorite interactions and things from epic multiplayer? I mean, that's like what makes epic multiplayer, I feel like, epic, right?
Mm-hmm. I love one of the things I love about epic multiplayer is when you're sitting there at your table and you're hacking away at your villain, and then you hear a cheer from like two tables over, and you can see everyone's heads turn over to that table, and so like you have to like send a representative like go find out what just happened over there, and so you send somebody to walk over to that table, and they're like, we just defeated the Doctor Strange villain with X, Y, and Z strategy, and that's one of my favorite things about epic multiplayer. That can of course happen if you're just doing free play with a bunch of different tables, but when it's epic, then it like influences your game as well, and you can like send cards their way, or they can send your cards your way. I love that kind of stuff. That's kind of like the reward for me for doing epic multiplayer. And you know, as you've laid out with the complexity of your Carnage scenario, this stuff is not easy to like play, much less design. So there definitely has to be a reward to it to actually playing it.
Yeah, I like that, and I like being able to help out other tables or request help. I find that
Mhm.
really fun, right? Like if I played in a chess tournament with my son today, and it's called Bughouse Chess, which is different than regular chess. So there's two chessboards next to each other, and when he takes a piece from his opponent, like he's playing white against black and I'm playing black against white, when he takes a piece from his opponent, he gives it to me. So I can stall and be like, I need you to get me a rook, but I'm going to run out of time on my timer eventually. So there's this like social aspect of like,
Wow.
give me the piece I need. And it's like meant to be like a social, like fun version of chess instead of like the dreaded, stressful chess clock version. And everybody was always having fun because they would like miss a checkmate and then someone would give someone the perfect piece to like end the game. So that's super fun. I like the like being able to ask for help, but then also
Mhm.
give the other player some help is a really interesting aspect of epic multiplayer.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun version of chess.
It's intense.
It kind of reminds me of a very recent epic multiplayer uh like memory I have. This was in a game of Arkham Horror, so more cross-pollination of our LCGs here. We were doing a epic multiplayer of one of those scenarios, and one table over, these people were just getting absolutely wrecked by the encounter deck, and so they're just all sitting there like heads in hands and like trying to figure out their way out of this, and we're like you good? Like what's going on over there? And so we're trying to figure out like how can we help you? We're like telling them like play slower, just play slower. We'll get you some help. Just like don't go to the next mythos phase yet. So it sounds very similar to your chess experience.
Nice. Like, I feel like one of the really early designs for that Kang scenario, or the Kang modular, was there used to be negative effects on there.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like it was a really good idea that we removed that, because it really sucked to go to another table and be like, you gotta discard a card.
Yeah, thank
Or
you,
your
local
hero's done.
playtest team. You are so kind. We had a version where like the negative effects were like this minion would spawn and another table would have to go find it and spawn it, which is annoying because they have to like search their deck, and it's annoying because like you have to go to another table and be like sorry. And like it was winnable, right? Because the effects were small, but like everyone hated going to the other tables. Like it's I don't know, when our team plays like team trivia at like a pub, the person has to walk up and like turn the answer in on the song, and it's like pulling like teeth every time. You're like, oh, I don't want to be the person to go over and hand this in, or to tell someone that like they're all stunned. Isn't that fun? So we inverted them, and we made the encounter cards harder, but then we said, but all the encounter cards, like you get to pass a buff to someone else. Because it's way more fun to go to a table and be like, y'all get to draw a card, have fun, and then walk away. Because then they like can come back later and be like, you gave us cards, guess what? You all heal 2 hit points. Because they're like trying to pay each other back. So the local like playtest team told me that at one point. They were just like, what if these all weren't horrible?
Yeah,
There was only one bad one, and there was one where you would take an acceleration token from your main scheme and pass it to another player, and it was called like the flow of time or something, and I liked the theme of it, so we kept that one. And I did hear some groans from it, so I understand.
Yeah, I mean that's really keen insight because like you don't want to resent the other players at the event. You want to you want to like go get a sandwich with them afterward and like actually like to sit with them instead of just give them the stink eye and be like, I can't believe you stunned me.
How dare you?
We want to like the people we play this game with.
It's
Yeah.
true.
I feel like in Lord of the Rings, I haven't been handed really terrible enemies that the table passed down.
Have you been to Con of the Rings?
Yes, I've been to like all the ones before the pandemic.
Okay. So this last year at Con of the Rings, someone as a joke made a bunch of these Mumakil enemies and passed them around the con, and you would shuffle them into your own deck, and when you drew them, you'd have to find a specific person at the con, like it would say his name on it. It would be like find, Splice and go put this in his play area. And so he just the whole con he would have people walking up to him and be like, "Sorry, I found a Mumakil," and just like put this giant war elephant into his play area. It was a lot of fun because he was up for it, but
I feel like part of that is like the difference between Marvel and Lord of the Rings, right? In Lord of the Rings, the scenarios are hard. Like they're meant to make you feel like you're barely scraping by. But in Marvel, like Marvel players like to win. We like winning. It's very fun. So I think that in Lord of the Rings it makes sense because the players like get this challenge and they're like, this new challenge, how are we going to overcome it as a team? And in Marvel they get the new challenge and they're like, you took my win away, my moment. This was my superhero landing. So it makes sense that like the effects would flip flop between the two games.
That's how we got Kree Fanatic.
Yeah, it's how we got some scenarios. But I mean, that makes sense with the Kang thing, right? We started it by looking at all the Lord of the Rings scenarios and being like, how do we make something like this? So we made something like that, and then realized, oh, that doesn't work for this game. That's not what we do here. But it should be a blast.
Do you have thoughts on, as you're kind of designing things, like this is stuff Kenny Hawk and I have discussed a bunch of times over the years. It's just been synchronizing is really hard. Like there's definitely some really cool effects if you can like synchronize like end of round or the next turn, and kind of like there's definitely some pretty amazing Lord of the Rings scenarios that you can do that way versus like I guess like Dreadnought where it's like play as fast as you want, who cares, like we're just going to track kind of global health pool. But I think you get significantly less certain kinds of player interaction with that kind of trade-off.
yeah, it's that same sort of thing I was talking about earlier with like bookkeeping and how much of a barrier is that going to be to the scenario. And for me personally, my taste is like minimize that sort of stuff. I don't always care for synchronized play. I'm trying to think of the last time I played an epic scenario that had synchronized play, but you get to this, you get to the point where the table that does play quickly, they're all just kind of twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the other players to catch up. And I think that's just as much of a negative play experience as like anything else. So I typically I tend to favor things where like hunt for the dreadnought. Like just go have fun, go sail the seas, and we'll keep track of health as you go. And if if it ends, it ends. So that's kind of my preferred style. But I don't think there's a right answer. Because like you said, synchronizing like the end of the turn stuff with some of those Lord of the Rings scenarios allows you to like specifically decide which group is going to which quest phase. Like I'm thinking of Assault on Dol Guldur here. Like at the end of each round, each group is deciding which part of the fortress they're assaulting. It's kind of a trade-off. If you have a huge group, it becomes much harder to synchronize. So if your goal is to create a scenario for 100 people all at once, I don't think synchronizing gameplay is even possible. But if it's designed for like 2 to 3 tables, then that's much more realistic,
Yeah, I think all those scenarios are like 3 tables. Like I don't even think they're designed for 2. Like it has to be 3. Like it was designed for 3 groups, and
yeah,
like
I think
that's
so.
how it's segmented. And so it's like you can either play a single table or you have to find 2 other tables to play with. Like those are your options.
Yeah,
And they were like very specific.
yeah.
I think
Arkham
the last
Horror
one I did
2.
was like Siege. Yeah.
Arkham has a mix of both because, like Labyrinths of Lunacy, you have to have 3 tables, but
Machinations
like
of Time as well.
the blob that everything you can have a blob that had like Gen Con, they had a blob that had like 40,000 health or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll be close.
Yeah, you've got to out blob the blob, but your blob is Carnage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear that?
They have a
ARPA
much
players?
stricter. They have a much stricter time limit to it, Gen Con, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any sort of time limit for your Carnage scenario?
I mean, the store closes at a certain time, so
Yeah.
4:30 to 9 p.m. Hopefully, you stop for dinner. No, I
Mhm.
think it'll take about an hour and a half because all tables typically are like progressing the same amount of damage in a given time, so it's scaling by number of players. So
That's
if
what we
every
say
player
every
can,
year,
yeah,
and it never takes an hour and a half. It's always
yeah.
like 3 hours.
But this time we control it more, so it's going to be 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, this
phase
time
2
you
of
can't
Carnage-
pick like Venom Goblin as your villain.
Yes, yeah.
And phase 2 of Carnage has 20 health per player in the whole group, or in the whole
20 health
unit?
per player in the whole group. So every table of 4 will have to contribute 80 hit points of damage. But what I've noticed at Con of Heroes is some people will set themselves up with like an X2-3 deck where they burst for like 100 damage at a turn. So that's why there's that slow cap, kind of like in Dreadnought, of like, pace yourself.
Yeah.
You don't get to kill Carnage with one person's turn. Star-Lord.
That's really smart. Yeah, because otherwise, with asynchronous play, the people that are playing more quickly might just do all the damage before anyone else has a chance to feel like they contributed, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard there's this new infinite loop deck. If you use it's Cable, Domino, and Nova, and some card from Magneto's kit, where you can like basically just keep replaying the same 3 allies over and over again. So if you do that, we're not going to allow your infinite damage. It's only 6 per player for the round, and then you'll have to at least deal with an encounter card before
Yeah.
you move on.
And no infinite get ragey on Miss Marvel ally, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I feel like the
Yeah, so we'll announce that at the beginning that when you're forming your like epic multiplayer tables, you should plan to have a well-rounded group, like someone that's going to defend for everybody so you're not letting too many allies chump. You're probably going to want someone to manage threat because the schemes go up really fast. So pick a role and like really focus on making sure you're getting to do that role and shine in it. And playtesting has been the most successful sort of when we have one of each aspect, which is generally how all the scenarios go. But this one in particular has the same flair.
Yeah, just looking at Carnage's ability, it's like, oh, you definitely want to have someone playing protection here. Just
anyhow, I
roll
just
in
like
with
those
4.
green cards.
Yeah.
I just expect Terrence to defend for me every round. I don't defend. Defending's so boring.
Yeah, when you play your entire turn in the villain phase and then you get to the hero phase and you're just like, oh, well, I guess I'm done.
I
I don't have
saved
any
you all,
cards left.
but
So
alright.
And
another
then
thing
Crossfire comes off and kills you.
Another thing I really like about what I've seen of the design of your scenario is like you said a moment ago, like the end game. I really like that it has an end game. Like it's got like phases to it where the first half you're this slide toward you're trying to delay the slide toward phase 2 as long as possible. And then there's the rush to kill the villain before you lose, right? And I think that's really cool because to contrast that with my Loki scenario, there's no pacing like that. It's just keep fighting villains until the event organizer says you win. So I think that's really exciting. Like it'll probably make the whole room feel like tense when you're getting toward the end and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if we keep announcing like how much health is left, people are gonna
Mhm.
feel like they can be a little bit more risky. The one thing we don't have is a failsafe if you get eliminated. So I did see in the Loki scenario there was a suggestion of giving like each table one resurrection for like an oopsie. So don't like plan on using it, but we're gonna announce that. I'm gonna shamelessly steal that from the Loki scenario and say like, hey, if you get defeated, maybe just like flip to alter ego mode and exhaust your hero instead. Like, don't leave the game the first round when you accidentally die because you forgot to defend. That's no fun. No one wants that for you. So I'll let players make their own judgment calls on that. Like, they can punish themselves by putting an acceleration token out or just something, I don't know, Deadpool style.
Yeah. Suddenly everyone's playing Deadpool.
Yeah, yeah. No one wants to die.
Yeah. I think that's really smart, especially because the bigger the group, the worse it feels to like have that early death and be like, well, 99 other people are having great fun right now, but I miscalculated as Spider Ham and now I'm dead.
We had someone do that in a playtest, and we were like, just reset your table. It's round 1. Like, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
Just do the thing. All right. Well, that probably wraps up our epic multiplayer extravaganza episode. Thank you for coming on and giving us some of your wisdom and sharing your awesome Loki scenario. I'm very excited. I know the local group here will definitely want to try it out.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And I highly encourage you to try it out. I've had a lot of fun with it. If you have any suggestions for it, let me know. I'll tweak stuff if I need to. So let me know how it goes.
Sweet. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you, everyone.